This next episode in the series about camel keeping for the International Year of Camelids is going to be about the economics of camel keeping. I'll be sharing with you the costs and the income that we've been making on our herd over the last several years. I also just want to remind people that it's really important to look at why you are starting a camel business. So today we're talking about the economics of camel milk production. First of all, one has to be aware of the high investment costs. You really need to buy at least 50 adult female camels if you're going to start supplying supermarkets and to maintain a good supply of milk year round. So you'll have enough milking animals at any one time. So you will have big investment costs. The second major issue is whether you're going to keep your animals on your own land or whether you're going to have to rent or lease grazing land. That can also be a major cost, and in order to support sufficient animals, you need to make sure that you have access to a large area of grazing land. Alternatively, you have to factor in the cost of buying in feeds and fodder, and that is much more expensive than the free-range grazing system. Branding and advertising also has costs because you need to do the marketing of your milk and making people aware of the benefits. Remember also to factor in spillage and spoilage, and make sure that when you are selling to a middleman or a middlewoman who's going to then retail for you, make sure that the payments they make to you are up to date. Try avoid giving credit and just factor in the time taken to get your payments, again, has a cost involved. So I feel a bit like a school teacher here, teaching everybody, but I'm sure you want to know how the expenditure has gone. What are the major costs? And where does the money go? We're talking about spending, 2.4 million shillings on average. And where does that money go? So over this last 6 years, on average, managing a camel herd of 100 adult camels. The biggest cost is in salaries. So 56% of our expenditure is on our herdsmen, our managers, casuals, all involved, and on contract basis or on a casual basis, 56% of our expenditure. The grazing and watering fees. Again, because we don't own land here and we're not living on community land, we're leasing grazing or paying a grazing fee monthly. And that has been anything between 300 shillings per adult camel per month up to 450 shillings per adult camel per month, and that includes the water and just the free range grazing. We haven't been supplementing at all. So that's 14% of the costs. The equipment, which is largely what you can see here around me, the solar cold chain system, the predator proof boma, the houses, the traditional houses which come all the way from northeastern, they've taken up 11% of our expenditure. That also includes the milk churns. We invested heavily in terms of milk churns away from plastic jerry cans, and so that is the third highest expenditure we have. And then transportation. Delivering the milk to Nakuru from Soisambu originally, and also from here delivering the milk. Initially we was delivering it to the local village. Now we're delivering it to the next door ranch, who transport it to Nanyuki twice a week, but we're charged for that transportation. And again, as I explained earlier, moving the animals from Nakuru all the way up to Laikipia was quite a costly exercise. So that took 7% of our expenditure. Salt and minerals, because camels do require a lot of salt. Adult camels need about 100 grams per day. So we're using a mixture of Magadi salt and then also minerals from Sidai, especially formulated camel minerals. We're also using Maclick and Superlick, different companies. So the salt and minerals cost us 5% of our expenditure. Veterinary drugs, only 3%. That might sound very low compared to cattle keepers, but camels generally do not need as much medicine. The number of diseases that they catch generally are less. So this is mostly in terms of dewormers, some antibiotics. Occasionally we vaccinate, and then spraying against ticks. So not high expenditure there. I also have an insurance scheme, not for the camels, but for the staff, with Weber and all the necessary insurances as a company. That's 3% of our expenditure each year. And the reason I haven't looked into livestock insurance for the camels, well, I have looked into it, but the reason I have not taken it out is all of the models there are too expensive. It means I would need to lose at least 14 camels a year to make it worth my while. Again, it only covers animals up to, I think it's designed for cattle. So again, it only covers animals up to a certain age, and camels live a lot longer, so it's not really applicable to camels. The other problem was the verification. You need a veterinarian to come out to verify the animal's been killed or had an accident, and the cost of doing that in itself, calling out a veterinarian, is probably going to be 20,000 shillings by the time you pay for the transport and the expenses. So we haven't taken out camel insurance or livestock insurance, but this is the insurance for the workers. And then bank transfers, licenses, local permits for operating a business, etc. They're taking 1% of our annual expenditure. So that's an overall view of what to expect when you start running a camel herd commercially. Of course, for pastoralist families, your grazing fees are probably going to be close to zero because it's communal land. You might have to pay watering fees. Generally, you'll be paying relatives to herd for you, so that your herding fees will be much, much lower. I'm paying well above the minimum wage. We're also paying NHIF, NSSF. So again, in traditional systems, your expenditure on salaries will be lower. Equipment, transport, all of these will probably be lower, although minerals is important, and I guess veterinary treatments will be about the same. So that's for you to understand what to expect and perhaps where you can find savings when you're setting up a more commercial camel milk business. As a breakdown of our annual expenditure, I've calculated the financial flows for the first 5 years in Soy Sambu down at Nakuru, which was the day we started down there in 2018 up until 2022. And then I've also included last year, but the expenses we had last year were much, much higher. So I've separated out to show you what the average is over the full 6 years up until last year and the 5 years. Let's start with the 5 years. So on average, across those 5 years, the total number of adult camels we had was 100. And we had just 101 was the average over the 6 years. So in 2023, we had a slightly bigger total number of animals. Over those 5 years, we had an increase in the number of camels by 6 in the first 5 years. And then in the last year, we had to sell a lot of camels to cover expenses. So we only had an increase of 3 in 2023 compared to our 2018 figures. The average number of camels sold each year was 9 in the first 5 years, and then because we sold many more last year in 2023, the average number of camels sold per year was 12. And the average numbers of camels dying each year was 6 to 7 out of the 100. So 6 to 7% mortality, and we had between a 9 and 12% offtake for sales. Now, our average annual income over the first 5 years, was 1.9 million shillings. And our expenditure at the same time, over that 5 years, was again 1.97 million shillings. Just basically, we only made an annual average profit of 2,000 shillings per year on that herd of 100 camels, which is pathetic. And this is not even including Rashid's time, my fellow camel owning partners' time, and my time. We didn't charge our diesel or petrol and transport. So basically, as herd owners, we weren't making any profit at all over the 5 years. And just to look at how much did it cost us to keep one adult camel each month, it was 1,700 shillings. That was the total expenditure divided by 100 camels. Now, as I said, in 2023, so if we're looking at the 6-year averages, we had a lot more expenditure. This last year in 2023, because we were moving the camels from Soisambu up to Laikipia, the costs of walking those animals, we had to employ at least 10 herders. They were on getting their daily allowances in addition to salaries. We were having to camp on the roadside. Sometimes there were fees to be paid to schools, etc. And moving 120 camels was expensive. We also had to put all the old females that were lactating and their young calves onto 2 lorries. That again was expensive to move them. And then once we got to Laikipia, we had to purchase this predator-proof boma or pen because it's a wildlife-rich area. Soisambu in Nakuru was also wildlife rich, but we didn't lose so many animals to predators. But here we lost 6 adult camels in the first year to lions and 2 calves to leopards. So we had to purchase this boma, which was expensive. We've also had to invest in all of this solar cold chain system because we're selling the milk in Nanyuki, which is a long way away. It's too far to deliver on a daily basis. And so we've had to install these 3 deep freezers and the solar equipment. And then also expanding the housing, the equipment and the housing for the staff has led to a lot more expenditure in 2023. So the average figures, our income over that 6 years on average was 2.1 million shillings per year, but our expenditure has been 2.4 million shillings. So that's basically a loss of 300,000 shillings per year. That's cash loss, investment cost, etc. And again, you can see as a result of all of this investment, our cost of keeping an animal per month, an adult animal, is over 2,000 shillings now. And it's probably even higher this year in 2024. So that's the breakdown of the economics of keeping this herd over the last 6 years. You can see it hasn't been profitable in terms of an income and expenditure, but we'll also show you that the herd overall has increased and the capital value of the herd has increased. So through the value of the herd today compared to what it was 6 years ago, we do have more capital in terms of animal numbers. So that is where we have made, if you like, some growth in our investment. But in terms of cash flow and day-to-day sales, etc., it's not always a profitable business. Some years we've been making losses, other years we've been making small profits.